In Varosca, every road belonged to the Crown of Measures. White stones divided the kingdom into distances small enough to tax. Bronze arches stood at village entrances and rang whenever a traveler passed beneath them. Children learned the lawful number of steps between bed, well, chapel, and grave. To walk too quickly suggested flight. To walk too slowly suggested concealment. To leave a marked road was called theft, because the crown claimed ownership not only of the earth, but of every direction a body might take across it. Lysenne Orra served as a dusk-runner, carrying sealed messages after the official roads had closed. She knew deal paths, dry riverbeds, plague trenches, and the hollow spaces beneath old bridges. She could not read the letters she carried, but she could read broken moss, a bent stalk, or a single grain of fresh mud on stone. Her younger sister, Milegates, was arrested for carrying medicine across an unmeasured field. The Ministry of Measures sentenced her to the procession of nails, a public march in iron shoes, each soul driven through the foot after every 100 steps. Lysenne attacked the procession with a hunting bow. Her first arrow fell short, her second struck a magistrate. Her third was still in the air when a soldier fired a crossbow at her heart. The field lurched, and Lysenne remained still, yet the grass, soldiers, gallows, and screaming crowd shifted 6 paces east. The bolt passed through the place where she had been, and buried itself in a white mile marker. Around Lysenne's neck hung an amulet she had never worn, smoke-dark stone. 7 silver threads, and the shape of a footprint sharpened into a point. She drew again. Strength entered her shoulders like a second skeleton. The arrow crossed the field before the bowstring made a sound. 3 soldiers fell along one impossible line. Lysenne seized Milegates and ran. With every stride, the road rolled backward beneath her feet. Dust streamed toward her instead of away. Pursuing horses stumbled as though the horizon had pulled their legs from under them. Behind the sisters, witnesses saw the mile marker, bleeding warm black water around the embedded bolt. Beneath the field, something vast flexed a buried toe. The sisters hid among the lamp-black runners, smugglers who lived in abandoned charcoal tunnels beneath the western hills. Their leader, Old Calvin, recognized the amulet but refused to touch it. He called it the Unfallen Step, a relic mentioned in road prayers older than Varosca. Those prayers said that the first road had not been laid by a traveler. The first road had learned to walk by itself. The amulet changed Lysenne's body. Her legs carried her across shale without slipping. Her hands drew bows built for soldiers twice her weight. She could turn in the instant between an enemy's decision and the movement of his blade. When she loosed a shaft, the air tightened around it and hurled it onward. Yet the gifts disturbed everything nearby. Water tilted in cups when Lysenne ran. Cellar walls gave off slow, sleeping heartbeats. Trees leaned east after she traveled west. When a blade seemed to miss her, people standing far away sometimes fell without injury. As if the ground had made a sudden movement their bodies could not follow. Milegates believed the amulet housed the spirit of an ancient runner. Dyer noticed something worse. Lysenne's footprints never pressed downward. They were raised slightly above the surrounding soil, as though an enormous surface beneath them had pushed back. The crown announced the great arrest. Every bridge, ferry, and mountain pass would close until the sisters were captured. Villages sheltering them would be fixed in place with iron stakes driven through each threshold. Thousands would starve behind sealed Milegates. Lysenne swore an oath before the lamp-black runners.
If they have counted every step, we will make them lose count.
The smugglers tied 7 silver threads round their wrists and adopted the amulet's mark. That night, the threads inside the Unfallen Step bent toward the capital. Far below, something that had forgotten the shape of direction felt Lysenne's vow and turned its dreaming head. Varosca's roads were controlled by 9 Milegates, colossal arches of white stone engraved with the lawful pace of every class: noble, soldier, laborer, widow, child, prisoner. Anyone passing beneath a gate at the wrong speed felt their muscles stiffen. Repeat offenders became rigid but remained conscious, their bodies mortared into the roadside as warnings. Lysenne began destroying the gates. At the gate of salt, she ran across the surface of a reservoir, while bolts struck water behind her. At the gate of grain, she fired through 6 rotating mill wheels and killed the keeper concealed beyond them. At the gate of ash, she lifted a fallen oak alone and used it as a ram while the rebels sang. No stone can teach the blood its pace. Her legend traveled faster than she did. People called her the arrow before thunder, the woman between footfalls, and Saint Elsewhere. Painted footprints appeared on prison doors. Mothers tied 7 silver threads around the ankles of children born during curfew. But every fallen gate changed the country. After salt, the reservoir's eastern shore rose 9 feet overnight. After grain, every mill in Varosca turned once, despite the absence of wind. After ash, a mountain moved far enough to hide a familiar constellation. Dyer examined the broken base of the 3rd gate. Its foundation was not masonry. Beneath the white shell lay a pale, fibrous substance that contracted when exposed to light. The stone had been driven through it like a nail through a tendon. He begged Lysenne to stop. The Milegates were instruments of oppression, but their roots descended far deeper than any human foundation. They might be pinning something in place. Lysenne refused. A chain did not become sacred because something dangerous wore it. If the crown had built its peace upon living prisoners, then the truth beneath the robes deserved freedom as much as the people above them. When the rebels left, the torn foundation slowly closed around the bodies of the dead. By dawn, no corpses remained. Only a new strip of road stretched north, warm as skin and pointing toward the 4th gate. The 4th Milegate stood in an orchard where no fruit grew. Thousands of short roads hung from the branches like black ribbons. Each ended in a small object: a child's shoe, a soldier's tooth, a wedding ring, a blood-stained key. These were remnants of journeys forbidden before they began. The gatekeeper, Mother Vera, had blinded herself so she could see the traffic beneath the world. She greeted Lysenne by name, but spoke to the amulet as if addressing a lost animal. Vera explained that the Crown of Measures had been founded after an event called the Sundering Pace. For one night, the hills crawled, rivers abandoned their beds. A city woke 30 miles from its foundations, leaving cellars and graves behind. The first measurers stopped the movement by driving 9 white spines through the deepest roads. Their descendants later turned necessary restraints into a theology of obedience.
The crown lies about why it owns the roads,
Vera said.
but it does not lie about what happens when the roads are free.
She offered to remove the amulet. The ritual would spare Lysenne's life, but it required both legs to be severed above the knee and buried beneath separate Milegates. The Unfallen Step could not remain inside someone incapable of taking another step. Before Lysenne could answer, royal archers entered the orchard. Their volley darkened the pale afternoon. The amulet moved the earth. Lysenne crossed 30 paces without feeling the space between them. Arrows fell where she had stood. Her own shot passed through 3 hanging roads, gathering the wind of 3 unfinished journeys. It struck Mother Vera through the blind eye, then continued beyond the orchard and rang against a tower 2 valleys away. Vera died, gripping Lysenne's wrist.
It is not carrying you.
She whispered.
It is practicing.
When the 4th gate collapsed, every tree bent west. Beneath the orchard, a structure larger than a palace rotated inside the earth, with the sound of a joint, remembering pain. The rebellion broke the next 3 gates in 26 days. With each victory, one silver thread inside the amulet turned black. With each blackened thread, Lysenne gained greater power. She outran mounted scouts. She tore iron doors from their hinges. Her arrows curved with the country's horizon and struck enemies hidden beyond sight. The land suffered corresponding wounds, wells filled with salt. Villages slid downhill while their inhabitants slept. Old roads surfaced through houses like ribs beneath thinning skin. Shepherds reported that the earth had begun breathing under their flocks. Mirette no longer called these events miracles. She kept a map on which she marked every landslide, vanished stream, and tremor. The pattern resembled a bent knee. She confronted Lysenne before the seventh gate. Freedom could not mean refusing to count the people crushed by their victories. Lysenne answered that the crown had taught them to mistake stillness for safety. Their argument ended when ministry soldiers attacked a refugee column crossing a suspended bridge. A child fell from the railing. Lysenne called upon the Unfallen Step and reached the child before the scream had finished. The amulet rolled the valley beneath her, turning distance into a single short stride. The child lived. The bridge's far anchorage moved 12 feet. Stone cables snapped. Hundreds fell into the gorge, including Mirette. Lysenne caught one hand at the edge, the hand of the child she had chosen to save. Mirette vanished into white mist below. That night, the seventh silver thread turned black. A new road appeared along the gorge wall, descending vertically toward a depth from which Mirette's voice seemed to rise.
You never ran alone. The earth ran for you.
Lysenne blamed the crown for forcing the choice. Dia saw the truth she could not bear. The amulet always saved what stood nearest to its bearer and moved the cost outward, into strangers, landscapes, and futures too distant to accuse it. The 8th Milegate waited at the walls of Namaro. Lysenne marched toward it with 10,000 followers, and no one left whose grief could make her turn back. At the center of Namaro stood the House of Zero, the fortress from which every official distance in Varosca was measured. Maps depicted all roads beginning there, even those older than the city. Lysenne entered Namaro as less a warrior than an event. She slipped between raindrops. She bent prison bars with her hands. Her arrows pierced doors, armor, and the shadows cast behind both. Soldiers threw down their weapons because the stone beneath their feet leaned eagerly toward her. After the 8th gate fell, the capital tilted. Wine ran from cups, bells rang against only one side of their towers. In the northern districts, thousands of people dreamed the same dream, a black horizon lifting an eyelid. Below the House of Zero, Lysenne and Dia found the Chamber of Deep Measures. Human roads were carved across its walls, but beneath the carvings lay older, patterned branching cords, mineral veins, and vast sheets of ivory that curved beyond torchlight. The chamber was not built underground. It had been cut into a body so large that generations had mistaken it for geology. First, Measurer Halvik Sorn waited beside the final white spine. He carried no weapon. He told Lysenne that Varosca did not stand upon a sleeping beast. The distinction was worse than that. Varosca was the crust upon its back. Mountains were mineral growths along its spine. Rivers ran through grooves in its ancient armor. Forests had rooted in layers of dust, and dead cities accumulated during its sleep. The oldest name for it was the Pilgrim Beneath, though no record said where it had come from, or what destination could require a journey longer than human history. The Unfallen Step was not a jewel cut from the creature. It was a single command expelled from its nervous system during the sundering pace. The command to lift one foot and place it somewhere else. The first measurers trapped that unfinished motion in stone and nailed the pilgrim's joints to the wall. Centuries later, the command had found Lysenne. Every step she took taught the pilgrim balance. Every turn taught it direction. Every evasive movement taught it how to shift its immense weight without falling. Every arrow taught it how matter could be accelerated toward a distant target. The crown had ruled the roads, but the Unfallen Step had designed the rebellion. Lysenne believed she could return the amulet to the final spine and end the awakening. Halvik told her it was too late. The smoke-dark stone had grown roots through her ribs and around her spine. Her nerves now ended in buried roads. The pilgrim did not merely observe her movements, it experienced the world through them. Lysenne had become its sense of balance, its hunting eye, and the small human model through which it remembered how to move. The rebellion itself had become part of the mechanism. Every silver thread worn by a follower marked another point in a nervous web spread across the kingdom. When crowds repeated Lysenne's oath, their synchronized footsteps carried the same command into the deep body. They were not simply an army. They were impulses moving along a limb. Halvik offered one remaining possibility. If Lysenne stayed perfectly still while the final gate was restored, the unfinished command might weaken. She would have to spend the rest of her life sealed upright in the chamber of deep measures, awake but unable to move even her eyes. The crown of measures would end, but some new order would have to guard the 9 spines without turning restraint into tyranny again. For the first time since Maritza's arrest, Lysenne chose stillness. It did not matter. Above them, the rebels had already become stronger than their leader. They heard that St. Elsewhere had entered the House of Zero and assumed she meant to destroy the last symbol of the crown. Dea climbed toward the courtyard to stop them. The crowd answered with Lysenne's own words.
No stone can teach the blood its pace.
They killed Dea as a traitor. Lysenne felt his death through the roads. She felt every boot crossing the courtyard, every hammer rising, every silver thread trembling against a wrist. She screamed for them to stop, but the pilgrim sent her voice into the ground. The rebels heard it as a roar of encouragement. The fine white spine cracked. Halvik looked upward as dust fell like reverse snow.
You freed the people,
He said.
then you freed their freedom from you.
The last gate broke before Lysenne could take another step. The kingdom took it for her. Varosca rose, cliffs unfolded into joints. Mountain chains separated like the plates of a black shell. Rivers poured from their beds and fell thousands of feet into the widening darkness below. At the borders, the earth tore open along a shape no map had ever shown. The outline of a body large enough to carry a nation across its back. The Pilgrim Beneath placed 1 foot beyond the northern coast. That single step moved Namaro 40 miles. Towers fell sideways. Forests became green waves. The sea fled from the shore, then returned as a wall. Half the rebellion died without understanding that victory had occurred. Lysenne remained rooted inside the House of Zero. Smoke-dark veins enclosed her limbs. Through the pilgrim she felt millions of people clinging to roads, roofs, trees, and broken Milegates. She felt villagers sliding across its armor. She felt the empty place where Maret had fallen, now revealed as a crease behind one colossal knee. She tried to turn the creature toward the uninhabited salt wastes. For a moment, it obeyed. Her human will still lived somewhere inside the command. Then every loose arrow in Varosca lifted from the ground. They pointed not north, south, east, or west, but upward, toward a starless wound, visible only between heartbeats. Lysenne understood the final purpose of the Unfallen Step. The pilgrim had not used her arrows merely to relearn speed. It had used them to study flight. Walking was only the first movement in a sequence. The destination, it remembered, was not located anywhere upon the earth. The creature lowered its body. Roads tightened across its back like bowstrings. The 7 black threads inside the amulet pulled straight. Every surviving mile marker turned toward the sky. Lysenne tried to hold still. She thought of Moretti's hand disappearing into mist. She thought of Dea refusing to touch the relic. She repeated her own name until the words lost meaning beneath a heartbeat wider than the sea. the pilgrim leapt. For one incandescent instant, the whole of Varosca became an arrow. Mountains for its head, rivers streaming behind like silver fletching, cities burning along its spine. Its departure carved a crater that filled with ocean before the sound reached neighboring kingdoms. Years later, astronomers saw a dark island cross the face of the moon. Tiny lights moved across it in straight lines. Some believed the people of Varosca still lived upon the pilgrim's back, compelled to walk without rest, so the creature could measure the distance between worlds. On certain winter nights, arrows fired into the sky do not return. Children wake with 7 silver threads tied around their ankles, though their parents swear the doors were locked. And in the empty sea, where Varosca once stood, waves continue to divide around the impression of a lifted foot, waiting for the second step to fall.